Okay, so before we start, there's a question in the chat. I'm just going to read it out loud. It says, how would you recommend taking computer science prerequisites for the first year? So I think that's computer science 131, 132, and math 140.
Do we have any computer science students current students visiting us right now? So that is not a question that I am terribly qualified to answer. That's a really good question for your academic advisor through computer science. If those are all required courses in your first year, I would say that you need to take them. You also, I assume that computer science 131 and 132 is first semester, second semester, and then the math 140 is required. Assuming that you have the background to take those classes, you should just go ahead and take them in the regular order. If they conflict with ETE classes, then that is something that we will have to work out, but we will work it out if they're required for your major. Before I go any further, it looks like I'm just going to go ahead and start. It looks like we have most of the people are here. I do have to let everybody know that this call is being recorded. If that is an issue for you, you are free to step off and we will have a separate non-recorded conversation at another time. This is being recorded so that we can use it and post it on the website so that students who are unable to attend one of these live sessions can at least see most of this going forward. Yes, thank you, Jess. In terms of the computer science question, there are several computer science ETE students who I can put you in touch with. And if you send me an email, speaking of my email, I'm going to share in the chat a URL. That is to the ETE Scholars Weebly page. Right on the very front of that, I uploaded a document. It'll say, invited students download this useful handout, something along those lines, right at the very top. There is a link there to a PDF that you can download that has my email address. It has contact information for a variety of different things on campus that you might find useful, has a very general overview of ETE, and then some links. So I recommend that you go ahead and grab that and you can ask me questions based on it in this session, or we can talk about it later. But most of the information is on there. You'll notice that I did not put a phone number on there. I have not set up my desk phone to forward to my cell phone. I am young enough that I do not have a home phone. So if you would like to have a phone conversation or a Zoom conversation, you can email me and we can set that up. I'd rather not put my personal cell phone information on here just in general, but I can give it out on a case-by-case basis. So I'm going to assume that your continued staying on this call is consenting to the recording. Maryland is a two-party state. Everybody has to give consent in order for it to be legit for us to record you. So I'm just going to assume that if you're staying on the call, that's okay with you. So welcome everybody and congratulations. This is welcome to College Park Scholars and to the University of Maryland, and congratulations on having been invited to this program. College Park Scholars is a selective program. It means that you have both demonstrated some sort of academic excellence in your high school career, and that you are beyond that interested in and connected to giving back to the community in some way. Those are the general criteria that we use when we're selecting our students. So it's not just that you got good grades and that you did well on the SATs. It is also that there's some connection to the community, something that you something beyond that you have chosen to do. I can't see everybody, so if there are parents on this call, congratulations to you as well for having raised somebody who has been invited to a program like this. That's quite an accomplishment, and you should be proud of yourselves, all of you. So I'm going to go over the way that I would do this if we were doing this in person is that I would give about 20 minutes of talk where I would sort of explain the general philosophy of and the mechanics of the ETE program. And then we would split up, and students, you would go in the other room with the current students where your parents and I could not hear what you were talking about. And you would have a conversation where you could really ask whatever you wanted to about college life, about ETE, anything like that. Unfortunately, that is not going to work terribly well in this context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the short talk. I will ask the current students to answer some specific questions about their experiences in ETE, and then we'll open it up for questions. You can either put them in the group chat or you can unmute your microphone and ask them. With this many people, that can be a little bit challenging, but we'll figure out how to be polite and make it all work. And then if there are questions that you have that are not answered while we're in this conversation, feel free. You do have my email address. You have a number of different ways of contacting us. Do feel free to reach out to me, and I can have a separate Zoom conversation or some other way to talk to you in private if you have more questions. So before I start, are there any other questions that anybody has? All right. So College Park Scholars is a large program, or a large umbrella program. There are 12 different individual programs within College Park Scholars. You read about them when you did your selection form. ETE was either first or second when you did that, and you were invited to this program. The focus of ETE is in sustainability. We define that very broadly. It is explicitly and deliberately not just about recycling and I don't know, stopping people from cutting down trees. It is important that we define that very broadly. We talk about the 3 pillars of sustainability a lot. The current students can tell you about that. It is not just the environment, it is also the economy, and it is also the people that we have to take into account in society when we're thinking about sustainability. And so our program is a living learning program. We all, when we can, live together. We live in, well, I don't, but my office is in Chestertown Hall, and the rest of the first year students all live in Chestertown. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. If you are a commuter, if you don't live on campus, you are not required to live in Chestertown. And I do give exceptions for medical reasons or other strong reasons not to live in Chestertown Hall. However, when students don't live in Chestertown, I have found that it is harder for them to get as much out of the program. So that's why I've continued the ETE tradition of requiring that students live in Chestertown Hall. And so we are an intentional community. We do things, we do activities together besides the class, which I'll get to in a second, that deliberately build community among the students. But the truth is that I don't have a huge amount of impact on how that community is built. It is the students and the ways that they interact that really create the community of ETE. And I would argue that in many, many ways, the real impact of the program is not what happens in the classroom. It's what happens in the dining hall. It's what happens in the hallways. It's what happens in people's dorm rooms before and after class. That is really the impact of ETE. And you can ask the current students about that. And I like to think of it as a small community within a large university. The University of Maryland is an extremely large place. It would be a city if it were its own city. And ETE it allows you to have a small, coherent community of people that give you something of a small liberal arts college feel in a giant state university. And one of the important things about ETE that I think sets us apart a little bit from some of the other programs is that we work very hard to have students from different academic disciplines, different majors, because it is my opinion that part of the goal and part of the benefit of the program is getting to know people who think and who are learning to think in different ways. And part of what you learn in an academic discipline is how to think like an engineer, how to think like a computer scientist, how to think like a philosopher. And if you're having to work with people who are learning that in different forms, it increases your ability to communicate across difference in a variety of different ways. And I think that that's extremely important. So that's the living part of the living learning program. The other part of it is that it is, we do have a class. We have a weekly class, a colloquium, which you'll discover as you read through the stuff, if you haven't already, for College Park Scholars. Somebody who created this program really liked Latin. We've got colloquium, we've got the practicum. There's something else, I can't remember what it is, but somebody really enjoyed using Latin words for things. But colloquium means that we're all in the same place. The idea is to have it be as much of an interactive and discussion-based course as possible. The focus of that is the sustainability curriculum that we teach, which is, once again, deliberately connected to the aspects of technology related to sustainability. We have a lot of engineering and computer science students in our classes, the business aspects, the political aspects, the ways in which society at large connects to sustainability. It's very, very important that, or a big part of not only what we teach, but the way that we teach it, is that we try to do as much hands-on learning as possible. Every semester, for the first 3 semesters, you're expected to do a field trip. You will be choosing from a list of several. If you go back to that that Weebly site, the one that I sent you to download the flyer, you'll see that there's a tab up there that says field trips. That is all of the field trips that were planned for this semester. They have been canceled, as you'll see in the announcement on there, because it's not safe for us to do them together. But those are examples of the kinds of field trips that we schedule for our students. And we do other things where the idea is to do the learning outside of the classroom. It's an example of that is every first semester, every fall, we do a waste audit. What we do is we go up to the STAMP, which is the student union on campus. There's a dining area there, and they sort the waste. There's 3 bins. You're supposed to put it in the compost, the recycling, or the garbage that goes to the landfill. And so what we do is we work with resident facilities. We have a lot of partnerships with other units on campus, and we safely, with gloves on, because it's all that day's waste, so it's not that nasty. It's not really garbage yet. It's still just old food. We sort it, and we sort it correctly into where it should have gone. So part of what we're doing is we are showing and gaining information for resident facilities so that they know how that waste is, how their messaging around waste sorting has been done. But the thing that I always find really interesting is that at the end of the semester, students write a reflection paper. We do it each semester, sort of looking back. We do it instead of a final exam, looking back on what they've learned throughout the semester. Overwhelmingly, students list the waste audit as something that was extremely meaningful to them, and it changed the way that they think more and in different ways than having just had the waste lecture. Because we also have a lecture from somebody from resident facilities comes and talks about waste sorting and the problems with contaminated waste streams and all of the issues that go with waste. And they learn something different. And that is, when I talk about hands-on learning, that's an example of why I think it's important, because we learn differently when we do it than if we hear about it or think about it. We also focus on professional development. The students who are graduating now and in the next few years face a different world than the one that I graduated into. When I went to college, it was sort of expected you would go to college, but it was there wasn't a huge, and there was an idea that a college degree would improve your career chances and improve the amount of money that you made, but there wasn't really the same emphasis on cost benefit and return on investment, I think, that people have now, partially because college costs a lot more than it used to. And so we work very hard to make sure that our students very, very early in their first semester are working on professional development. So we collaborate with the Career Center. In class, we'll work on your resumes and your cover letters. We do a number of different projects in class, sometimes individual and sometimes in groups. And I have heard from past students overwhelmingly that when they are interviewing for jobs and internships, the interviewers are very interested in the examples that they are able to give from those projects, because it's something that's beyond what they simply did in class. We have a practicum project. You're all required, see, we're back to the Latin. You're all required to do some sort of professional experience. It can be an internship or a job, research, something along those lines. And then at the end, we have a career panel where people who are in a variety of different professions connected to sustainability come to campus, and you do essentially an informational interview with them. Some of those are graduates of the university who were in ETE and come back to help us, and others are very well established in their fields. We have a man who founded his own company many years ago and has a novel way of generating electricity from tides. And we do academic developments. I meet with every single student to make sure that things are going well in their first semester. I'm available to help advocate if there are issues with the university, if there are problems, and we work a little bit on at least being conscious of our time management and the ways in which we're spending our time. One of the things that students often report, I see you laughing up there, Mel. One of the things that students often report is that coming out of high school into a university setting is you have a lot more free time, and it can be a challenge to use that free time wisely sometimes. Currently, the current students are finding that it is even more of a challenge when you have all of your lectures are recorded online and you can absolutely watch them anytime you want. It is really, really hard sometimes to get yourself to do the work, and that's one of the ways that we've been sort of trying to continue this ETE experience for students who can't all be in the same place, is having conversations and having some thoughts about how to deal with stuff like that. So that's another thing we do. And the main thing, one of the things that you'll see in the ETE mission statement is that we try to teach critical thinking, and that is a thing that many educators will say that they teach. I'm here to tell you it is one of the hardest things to teach. It is almost impossible to evaluate. I mean, it's very easy to tell if somebody learned the different conformations of a ring structure in organic chemistry. It is much harder to tell if they learned to think critically. So that is one of the things that we work very hard. And it gets back to what I was talking about before with the hands-on learning, because critical thinking lends itself, or that kind of learning lends itself to critical thinking. So that is what we try to do. I'll just finish this and then I'll see if anybody has any questions. One of the things that comes up periodically is people will say, well, I'm not interested in being an environmental scientist. I don't want to be the chief sustainability officer of a company. Why would it be important for me to learn about sustainability? And there's several examples or several answers to that. One of them is, it is my opinion, and I think that there are several people that share the opinion, that it kind of matters in the big scale of the world. When I was talking before about one of the reasons that students are invited to College Park Scholars is because they have some engagement with and care about the state of the world. The actions that we take are connected to that, and so being aware of and thinking about the impact that we have on the planet and other people is important from an ethical point of view. It is also, from a more practical situation, sustainability is integrated into many disciplines. There are, even if you are not the chief sustainability officer at a company, companies have to deal with environmental regulation and sustainability in a variety of different ways. And from a public relations perspective, from all sorts of different impacts. And it's important to be aware of the ways in which the discipline that you are in impacts that aspect of the world. So it's also important there. You will not be an expert at the end of 2 years. You will not be an expert environmental scientist at the end of 2 years of ETE. That is not what we do. We have it's a total of 15 credits, only some of which are even connected directly to sustainability. So you're not going to come out an expert. There are very good majors here on campus, or over there on campus now, that will allow you to either a policy or a science expert in environmental fields, and you can do those. But if you do ETE, you'll still be an engineer or a business major or a philosophy major or whatever it is that you are, and you will be integrating the thoughts and the impacts on sustainability into that work. There was a study in 2011, my predecessor absolutely loved to talk about it, and I make sure to bring it up every time. There was, they asked the hiring managers at a number of big companies, if you had two equally qualified candidates, one of whom had some sustainability background and one of whom did not, would it affect your hiring decision? And overwhelmingly, 97% or something said they would be more inclined to hire the person with a little bit of sustainability background, because it's so important in the business structure to be aware of that. So it does possibly give you a little bit of a leg up, in addition to all of the other career development and professional development things that I was talking about before. So the structure of the program, which you can, I think I put it on that form that you downloaded. Yeah, sort of. There is a colloquium each semester. The first semester, it's 1 credit. Starting next year, the second semester will be 3 credits. It will fulfill some general education requirements, so it will also fulfill some other things that you need. And then the remaining semesters are also 1 credit. For the first 3 semesters, you do 1 field trip per semester. And like I said before, you can find a list of examples of those up on the Weebly site that I gave you a link to earlier. If anybody has come in late, I'm going to post that again. And then you're expected to take 2 supporting courses. We have a long list of those. There's a link on that sheet that you downloaded to the citation sheet, which will tell you what those courses are. They're connected to sustainability in some way. And it'll also tell you which general education requirements they fulfill, so they're not extra. I just posted that twice in a row. So they're not extra credits that you have to take. And then we all live together. We all live in Chestertown Hall, with a few exceptions, in the first year. You are able to have priority to come back to Chestertown Hall as a sophomore. Most students don't, though some, Nina being an example, do. And before we go any further, I'm just going to disclose, some of you may have heard this already, Chestertown Hall is one of the few on campus that does not have air conditioning. You get, I think, about $100 off your housing bill as a result of that, which is a little absurd. It doesn't seem like nearly enough. And the truth is that there are a couple of weeks in the fall and a couple of weeks at the end of the spring that are very hot, and you will be hot in Chestertown. There's no way around that. But I have asked students over and over, once they have arrived at the university, before they get here, people are very nervous about the lack of air conditioning. But current students who have been here for a while will tell you their first choice, if they could live in any way they want, would be to live in Chestertown Hall with air conditioning. That would be the thing that they would like most. But their second choice is to stay in Chestertown Hall without air conditioning. And their third choice would be to move into one of the larger high-rise dorms with some of the other programs. And some of the advantages of being in Chestertown, it's a smaller dorm. The only College Park Scholars program in Chestertown is ETE, so there's more community. And the lounges are all on the first floor. There are not floor lounges, so students often study together and meet more people in their program than they have heard students in other programs do, because they are all coming down to the same lounge, which, by the way, is air conditioned. So when you're studying, you're encouraged to be there because it's nice and cool. So that's my sort of standard warning about the air conditioning in Chestertown. It is something that usually comes up, and I like to head it off. So I am now going to open it up for questions. If anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute your mic and ask me. And while I'm doing that, yes, Eliza, I hope that's correct. There is a kitchen in Chestertown Hall. It is fully functional. It has a stove. It has a refrigerator and a microwave. There are a few pots and pans that are in there if you're very serious or moderately serious about cooking anything, you're probably going to want to bring at least a little bit of that stuff on your own. But yes, there is a fully functional kitchen in Chestertown with an oven and everything.
And people do use it.
And people do use it.
And there's a hot water tap, which is the coolest thing I've
true.
ever seen.
That's true. So you can make your tea instantly. The hot water tap comes out nearly boiling, and it's very nice. Brandon, is there anything specific you have to say on the housing form? You should not have to. If you are in ETE, you should be routed to Chestertown automatically. You do need to fill out the housing form. It looks like maybe Jess has an extra comment on this, but you do need to make sure you fill out the housing form. Some people think, oh, I'm required to live in Chestertown, so I'm automatically entered. You are not. You need to fill it out, but I don't believe there's anything extra you have to say. Jess will let you know if there is.
No, Tim just said exactly what I was going to say. All that really matters is you make sure you get that in by November. May 1st, not November 1st. November 1st is when you applied to be here. Wow. By May 1st. If you get that in by May 1st, Resident Life then cross-checks with us to say, can you confirm your rosters? We do that. And then we, around May 15th, when you get that roommate placement, that will reflect that you are in Chestertown Hall and in College Park Scholars. So there's nothing additional you need to do. And I will say right now, the timeline that they have in terms of finding out about roommate pairings is late July. So I don't know how long that roommate selection process stays open. I would say the sooner you fill it out, the better. But no matter what, they probably will not let you know until later in July.
And Eliza's question, if campus is closed in the fall, what will happen to the money you spend on housing? I don't 100% have an answer to that. I do know that students have been or are being refunded the money that they spent on housing for this semester. So they should not charge you the money for housing if the campus is still closed in the fall. I'm not sure what you mean as well as other changes. If you want to elaborate on that. Christopher, students, you can probably answer this better than I can. I'm sure you're allowed to have fridges. Can you have microwaves in your dorm? I don't think so. But there is a microwave in the kitchen downstairs. So yes, you can have a refrigerator. There are one of them only works sometimes, but there are 2 microwaves. Maria, it varies from year to year, and I don't know what our current numbers are, usually between 70 and 90 students in each cohort. So there would be 70 to 90 new students coming in, and then approximately that many from the years before. Nathan, if there's someone in another scholars program, you can request. Some of them have, some of the other programs also have a residency requirement. So students in another program that have to live in another dorm would not be able to come into Chestertown. However, you can request, if they do not have a residency requirement, you can request that. Like I was saying before, they're not guaranteeing anything and it's hard to know what's going to happen, but you can certainly request it. If you're welcome to go ahead and continue to put questions into the chat. I'm going to open it up to the current students a little bit. If you want to introduce yourself, talk about your major, your year in school, and maybe your favorite ETE experience, or I'll just leave that like that. So the favorite thing that happened to you so far in ETE. Let's start with Mel.
Hi, my name is Mel. I am a freshman in ETE. My major is undecided, but I intend to declare theater and hearing and speech science. And my favorite ETE memory so far is, so when me and my friends walk around campus, a lot of them are in ETE, and I met them by hanging out in the lounge. When we pick up trash on campus, or maybe oh, I need to go grab my water bottle, we chant ETE, ETE. So that's always fun.
Thank you, Mel. Vicky, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm a freshman, biology, ecology, and evolution major. I put my Instagram in my little name there. It's just my name. If you want to ask me questions that shouldn't be recorded or asked in front of parents, you can DM me. And my favorite ETE memory is probably sitting in Nina and Rihanna's room. They're also in this chat and talking to them for 3 hours, like at least once a week. They're in ETE, so it counts.
Nina, why don't you go ahead?
I'm Nina. Oh, wait. I just realized that there's two of
Go
us.
ahead. I'll go after you.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was actually looking at Nina McGranahan, so perfect. Well done.
I'm Nina. I'm a freshman environmental science and policy major. And my favorite ETE memory is probably, well, at the beginning of last semester, getting to meet all my friends in the lounge of Chestertown because we all had really hot rooms, but the lunch was air conditioned. And I met a lot of great friends that way. So, yeah.
Okay, Nina Jeffries, you go.
Hi, I'm also Nina. I'm a sophomore. I'm an environmental science and policy and Arabic major. My favorite ET memory was a time, so the community learning garden is right next to the ETE dorm, and there was a time where Tim and some other ETE students, we did like a farm to table kind of dinner, so it was fun to harvest food from the farm and then also other various things and make a meal. So, yeah.
And Rihanna.
Hi, my name is Rihanna. I'm a freshman. I'm still letters and sciences, but I'm changing my major to criminal justice and criminology, probably double majoring in sociology. And my favorite memory was going on our field trip to this museum called Glenstone. Vicky and I went, and it was weird because if you've ever seen The Giver, that's what it was like. It felt like a utopia. It was very weird, but a good time.
All right. And invited students, do you have any questions for us, for me or for the others? Thank you for, Vicky, it was you that said that your Instagram is in there. If anybody has questions that they would like to ask of the student panel that they don't want necessarily to be recorded or to be public like this, if you send me an email and ask that, I will find some students who are willing to participate and I will send their emails to you, and then you all can communicate totally separate from me, since we can't really do that here, since everything is being recorded and everything, the chat gets downloaded. So yeah, incidentally, public service announcement, even if you do a private message in chat, it's only private until the call is ended, and then that becomes part of the transcript that everybody can see. So general Zoom announcement for anybody that needed to know that. So students, do you have any questions? Or parents? I can't see if there are any parents on here, but I'm happy to answer questions from them as well.
Tim, did you want me to do a breakout group potentially?
I don't think so. I don't think so. If nobody has any questions, why don't we, student panelists, why don't you go ahead and unmute your mics and talk a little bit about the your field trip experiences and the your connections project that you're either doing or have done.
I can start. So talk about my field trip experiences. The three that I remember were cleaning up trash along the Anacostia River, canoeing in the Anacostia River. And I can't actually remember the third. I shouldn't have said I remember three, but there was a third. But definitely canoeing along the Anacostia was my favorite field trip. That was the one that I did my first field trip in the fall, my freshman year. And I was able to go with people who lived across the hall from me. in my dorm, and that's really how I was able to make my closest friends in ETE. I really appreciated that experience. It was wonderful. I learned a lot about the Anacostia River. When we do field trips, we are usually, in my experiences, we've been paired up with very knowledgeable guides. So like we learned some stuff about environmental justice. We learned some stuff about like geography and also just like watersheds, how they all work. Very cool experience. And so I'll talk, I guess, a little bit about my Connections project. So the Connections project is a project that ETE freshmen do. And it's a little bit different for the freshmen this year, but last year, the goal was to come up with a project kind of for your own group and to come away with a deliverable product. So my group was trying to create a program where we could track turtles on campus. Yeah, specifically box turtles. They're the closest like related to testudo, so we thought it would be fun to have a project where students could actually see if we have box turtles on campus or where they live, and we thought that it would be cool for the university to do that. That was our project. It didn't end up getting implemented in the end. Yeah.
But it's not too late.
One thing that, this isn't a field trip, but it kind of is, but for service day, which is basically scholar students move in a day late, the day early in the fall, and the next day you spend the day doing service. And this is one of my favorite another favorite ETE memory. Our job was basically like moving trees around and deciding if they were dead or not. And it was like in the rain and we were throwing buckets the entire day. And that was a lot of fun, but we also got to learn about like different kinds of trees and like small farms in the area. I think we went to Claggett Farm. And then some people got to go on an actual hayride at the farm, not our group, but someone else's group. And that brings me to the topic of peer mentor groups, which I don't know how much has been talked about yet.
I totally forgot. Thank you.
Right. So when you, as a freshman in any scholars program, you get assigned to a peer mentor group where a sophomore in your program or a junior who was in your program, like gets assigned a group of students. I don't know how many, like 10 or 12. And like you do a scavenger hunt together in the fall, you do the service day project together. And that's a fun, like, that was a fun opportunity to make friends like day one of college move-in. And I still talk to my peer mentor a lot and ask her for advice on a lot of things, and she's very knowledgeable. So I think that's a cool perk of scholars.
And that was actually created by students and is still run by students. So students wanted to have peer mentors. Students make the choices of who is the peer mentors and they run the curriculum. There's a certain amount of impact that directors can have on it, but it's really a student run and student created project, which is a pretty neat thing. The answer to your question, John, is there are both first and second year students in ETE. It lasts for 4 semesters. So at the end of your second year, assuming you've completed all the requirements, you will get what's called a citation on your transcript. It'll say that you have completed the ETE program of College Park Scholars, and it's kind of a neat thing because you can start at that point to put that accomplishment onto your resume. You can use it when you are applying for jobs. It is something that you have done, even though you haven't completed all the requirements for your major. In terms of living, though, the first year students all live, with the exceptions that I mentioned, all live in Chestertown together. The second year students can if they want to. Most do not, though some do. So but what I found is that often when students move to other places and live in other places on campus, they are still rooming with people that they met in ETE. It's a group of 3 or 4, 5 ETE students who have moved somewhere else and are still living together because of the bonds that they formed. Mel mentioned service day. That is something that we do at the beginning of the year. It's a really great way for students to bond before classes start and to have, so that you start the semester off with friends already in a way that some students who are not in a living learning program or aren't in scholars don't necessarily have, because we all go out and we do a project together. This last year, it really did rain. Usually it's quite hot, but it was for the first time ever that I'm aware of, kind of cold on service day. And we work together, and we all make, in one of the things we do in ETE is we actually make ice cream on site and then serve everybody a little bit of homemade vanilla ice cream, which, you know, is more attractive when you've been in the hot all day, but it's still pretty tasty even if it's cold out. But it's a way for students to get to know each other, and then you'll also be working with your peer mentor during that day, so that you know your peer mentor, you know some other students in the program, and you already have a little bit of a group before classes start. The peer mentors often take students around that first weekend so that you can find all your classes. Because like I said, it is a big campus, so sometimes finding the classrooms where you're going to be going the next week can be a challenge. So you get a chance to go around and explore the campus with somebody that knows it. Any further questions, anybody? Somebody else want to talk a little bit about field trips and projects?
Okay, so I was in the same, or I guess I still am, I'm in the same peer mentor group as Mel. I love our peer mentor. She's the best. She texted me yesterday. She's wonderful. Anyway,
Me too.
she's great. Our, oh, one thing I wanted to say about peer mentor is that you get to pick your own peer mentor. So you're going to get an email, I don't know, in July, whenever they finish deciding who gets to be peer mentors this year, with like videos that we're all going to make, because a lot of the people in this call are going to be peer mentors, that we're going to make that say like, hi, this is who I am, and talk about our interests. And then you get to email back and ideally pick, I think you give like 3 choices and hopefully you'll get one of those, or you just get sorted randomly if you don't say anything. But I think that's nice because I got my first choice and I really like her, so it's cool. I got to babysit her hedgehog like the week before we went on spring break and never came back. But service day was like a very rough time, but a good time. It was nice because I like knew Mel after that. We bonded over having back pain from lifting trees, and everybody was covered in mud, at least in our group. Everybody else was fine. It was just our group who suffered. And then like the field trips I think are really cool because it's like a good opportunity to easily leave campus for free. So when we went to Glenstone, the art museum, with like I went with Rihanna, and then like the rest of the group was mainly sophomores that we didn't know. It was like the weirdest possible trip that we could have been on, but then the best part was trying to explain what happened at it to everyone else after, because it was just crazy. Like I think we spent like 2 hours explaining to Nina what happened because it was just so weird. And then it was just also cool because we just like took 2 vans there, and Marcy, like the assistant director of ETE, she's not here today, but she like drove us, and it was fun. And they had soup that was really good that we got for free, and Rihanna and I both got t-shirts there that were cool, and they were like part of an art exhibit. And like it's cool to have someone who's knowledgeable about a topic be explaining everything and walking you around, because that place, like you have to get a personal tour, and it seems like they're all kind of reserved for like rich old people who have the time to go on a weekday morning. But we got to go because we're students, so that was like fun because it's like kind of an exclusive place. And then I also like the field trips are just really cool. If I had gone on my field trip that I signed up for this semester, it would have been to the Smithsonian Environmental Research Conservatory, and I really like going there. I've been there before for other field trips like in middle and high school, and I think it's a really fun place. I was excited to go back. Hopefully I'll get to do it next year, but just like I think they're a good way. And like I have a lot of friends who are in honors and stuff, and they don't get to do like any fun stuff, or at least like university honors specifically, like they don't get to go have fun field trips. So they're always jealous when I'm like, oh, I can't do anything this Saturday. I'm gonna be leaving campus on a bus with my friends. So it's like a good way to get to do something social for free, and then you just have to like do a worksheet about it, and then you get class credit. And it's just like a fun perk of being an ETE and being in scholars, because I think the other scholars programs do it, or at least some of them do.
Yeah, different scholars programs do them differently, but we work very, very hard to make sure that our field trips are fun. So I'm glad to hear that that's working.
Another kind of field trip that happened this year was 3 of my friends went to Ecuador. I think it was Ecuador over winter break. and they had a fantastic time. And I think there was an option for them to be able to use it as their practicum, but like they were freshmen who got to study abroad, and it was with another scholars program, but they all became such close friends over the course of it, and like really kind of lived in Ecuador, like went out to restaurants there, out like away from the professors, and stayed with families, host families. That was a really cool trip.
So I guess I can talk about my field trip too. I went on a tour of the capital, and on the field trip we also talked about carbon taxes and carbon pricing, like cap and trade policies, which is really interesting for me because I'm interested in the policy side of environmental science, and so like it was cool. And plus, like Vicky said, we got to like get off of campus. They like we all the ETE students went as a group to DC on the metro. It was really cool. We went on a tour. It was really pretty. Yeah, and for my connections project, I guess we haven't been talking about that as much, but my group is working with the University of Maryland Arboretum, because like the entire UMP campus is actually a certified arboretum. And we're working with Arboretum to help raise awareness for a trail that exists on campus called the Wooded Hillock Trail. And we're also raising awareness, well, hopefully through our project, for just like about the mental health benefits of being outside, because it's mental health is something that a lot of students struggle with. So we're like putting together a grant proposal for this project. And yeah.
And I'd like to point out that the Wooded Hillock Trail was actually also created as a student project through the Connections Project. Some of our students did that in their second semester, and then spent the remaining 3 years that they were here. We support students that want to continue to do it. With an independent study class, so that they can continue to work on the project and implement it over time. So we've had several people do that and follow up, so that the project that your group is working on is actually the further continuation of maintaining the project that some other students started a long time ago. Did anybody else? We have a few more minutes if anybody else has any further questions. So before we go, there's a suggestion that we all turn on our cameras so that we can all see each other. So invited students whose cameras are off, if you would like to, you can turn on your cameras and say hi to everybody. If you do have further questions beyond what we talked about today, if something else comes up, do feel free to email me. Hey, look at all those faces. Do feel free to email me if you would like to talk directly to me, or if you want an email address for some of the students that you met or other students. For example, we had a question specifically about computer science earlier that I wasn't terribly qualified to answer. I can connect you with a current student in computer science or in whatever other major you may be in, to ask those questions and get some idea of what it's like on campus.
Like for the computer science question, I have a lot of comp sci friends, and like I was like intended engineering. It was a long story, but with that, you should make sure that you're taking your classes so that your prereqs will line up correctly. So like if you need to take math 140 before you can take the second one, which is 141. So it's better, they advise to take that in the fall. And just when you're deciding which classes to take, think about your course load in general. So if you're taking like a heavy physics class, a heavy chem class, and then a comp sci and like math or like calc, you want to make sure you can handle that. So it's best to lay out your schedule in a way where you're not putting too much pressure on yourself, because comp sci is a really demanding major. Good job for doing that, but just be careful with what you're doing and make sure that you are taking care of yourself and lining out your classes correctly.
And you will have a chance to talk to an academic advisor in your department to ask those kinds of questions. But Rihanna's comment is really, really important. Keep an eye on prerequisites and don't, you like, if you can't take the next class without taking that one. I actually tried to do that one time when I was an undergraduate. Luckily, I knew the TA, and he spent an afternoon teaching me redox chemistry because it was part of what we had to do, and I had never seen it before. So that was hard, but I managed to pass. So yeah, but do keep an eye on prerequisites and make sure that you take things in order. We now have Instagrams from all of the current students in their screen names. So if anybody wants to connect with them on Instagram, you have a chance to do that, because that is way cooler than Facebook. I'm totally aware. Since I am the entire communications department for ETE, I managed to keep up with an ETE Facebook, and that is about as far as I can get. Incidentally, on that sheet that you downloaded, there are links to all sorts of different things, including the ETE Facebook. That's a place to get some useful information about what it's like to be an ETE student. I post readings on there that we do in class. I post pictures of stuff that happens on field trips. And then there's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as a website and an email address for scholars in general. I put some useful stuff for admissions on there. And we are all available for follow-up questions. So if nobody has any further questions, I will go ahead and close. We can all wave. Thank you all for coming. I hope to see you in the fall, and I hope that we can all be in the same place in the fall. It will be much more fun.